Hello everyone, this is Dr. Basanti Devi. In my last talk, I discussed various factors which affect uh, language variation. So, the, as I have already mentioned, in social linguistics, we study about the social aspects of language. So, there are different social factors as well as regional factors which affect uh, language itself. So that means it causes, these factors cause language variation. So in my last lecture, I elaborated on the various factors causing language variation. Today, my topic is scope of social linguistics. The scope of social linguistics is very vast. We study quite a lot of uh, topics in social linguistics. Uh, Before I go on to elaborate uh, the scope of social linguistics, let me just make it clear what scope means here. In my experience, I found many students are confused with the meaning of the word scope. So, scope has several meanings. One meaning, of course, the students must be aware of, that is the possibility or possibilities of appointment or employment, etc. For example, someone may ask a speech and hearing student, what is the scope of this particular discipline? So the answer would be that is a person who completes a course in speech and hearing. The person can work as an audiologist. The person can work as a speech language pathologist in any hospital setup. And if a person doesn't get a job in a hospital, the person can start own clinic. Then people can also go for choose the academic line. That is to say, they can take up teaching jobs. So they can go for higher studies. They can do PhD, and then they can take up a job in a speech and hearing institute. That is the scope of the discipline of speech and hearing. But when we say the scope of social linguistics, what does it mean? It means the range of topics that are studied in social linguistics. So, the scope of social linguistics is very vast. We do study a lot of topics. So, let me elaborate on each topic one by one. Number one is dialectology. Dialectology. What is dialectology? It is the study of dialects. So, what is a dialect? A dialect is a social or regional variation of language. A- any language can have several uh, dialects. Uh, for example, if you uh, if you take for example Kannada language, Kannada, which is spoken in Karnataka, and if you will find that there are several dialects. uh, there one dialect, that is this the standard dialect, is spoken in places like Mysore, Bangalore. Then you have one you have dialects spoken in the northern side of Karnataka. You have dialect in you have a dialectal variation in the district of South Canara. So there are dialectal variations. So if you look at English, you will find that there are three very broad dialects. But in addition to them, there are again many dialects. But broadly speaking, we can say that There are three varieties of English. One is British English, one is American English, and one is Australian English. These are regional variations. The variations occur due to geographical distance. Uh, but in addition to these geographical or regional dialects, there are social dialects. So, what are social dialects? Social dialects are caused by social factors. Social factors like socioeconomic status, maybe religion, and in the Indian context, maybe caste. Let me first talk on social dialects of uh, British English. This you will find that there are two. There are many dialects, but two important varieties are the RP English. RP English. R for received, and P for pronunciation. Received pronunciation. One variety is called received pronunciation because this is the most refined form of English spoken in London city. It is also called Queen's English because the British royal family speaks this language. Not only the royal family, but all educated, highly educated people belonging to upper socioeconomic class speak this language. This form of language. It is called RP English. And on the other end of the spectrum, you will find Cockney. What is Cockney? Cockney is spoken by the lower class people, the people who live or do business in the streets. Let us say the flower vendors and other vendors who sell their products in the footpath. So they speak a variety which is very, very different from RP English. Uh, I don't know how many people have seen the film My Fair Lady. My Fair Lady is a film based on a play written by George Bernard Shaw. Now, the theme of the film is the you know the the dichotomy between these two varieties. So here you have a professor who teaches phonetics, who is very particular about meticulous pronunciation of the language. Then on the other hand, there is a flower girl, that is to say, a girl who sells flowers. So her English is very, very different. That is to say, even the speech sounds uh, are not. Yes, not all the sounds. Some of the sounds are not the same as found in RP English. So he tries to teach this girl the correct pronunciation of uh, RP English. And as a result, there are many hilarious situations. So this is this is what we see in the film My Fair Lady. Okay, this is about dialectology. I'm coming to the next topic, language variation and change. So it is not language variation is not restricted to just dialectal variations. There are many other variations, and these variations are again caused by different factors. So some of the factors I have already discussed. So the topic of this, this again, the topic language variation and change uh, uh, is within the scope of sociolinguistics. So language, as I said, variation may be caused by so many factors and also change. Now, what is meant by change? A language can undergo changes because of certain factors. So this is also studied here in language variation and change. Uh, Language choice and code switching. So what is meant by language choice and code switching? Language choice is when do you have language choice? When a speaker knows several languages, then the speaker has choices. So depending on the situation, depending on the addressee, the speaker changes his or her code. Uh, that is to say, the speaker chooses the code. For example, if you take my own example, I am a speaker of several languages. So I uh, choose my code depending on the situation, depending on the setting, depending on the addressee. So, for example, I live in Mysore, that is Karnataka. I know Kannada. So, with uh, majority of the Kannada speakers, I speak Kannada. But there are also some Kannada speakers with whom I always converse in English. Okay. Uh, Similarly, uh, I choose Bengali language when I speak to my Bengali friends. Now, if it is necessary, I switch over to Hindi. Uh, and most of my, I mean, uh, I speak English in all my academic performances. For example, if it is a lecture, if it is teaching, or if it is a speech, I use English. For example, right now I am using English. My mother tongue is Assamese, and I also speak Assamese with my Assamese friends, with my uh, close relatives, family members, etc. So I choose a language according to the uh, setting, according to the uh, speaker. Sorry, I mean addressee, whom I address. So code switching, you must be aware of the term code switching. What is meant by code switching? Code switching means that you switch, you change from one language to another. Code switching, when does code switching take place? Why does code switching take place? Why do we have to switch code? So all these are questions are uh, you know deliberated on. We 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 try to study why people switch code, and when it is necessary to switch code, and what happens when we switch code. So it will have some consequences when you choose switch code. Definitely there will be some effect on the performance. Okay, so these things are studied in uh, are a part of this particular topic. Then the next topic is language in interaction. So we change our language depending on mm, who the addressee is, what the setting is. So is it a formal setting, or is it an informal or casual setting? And what relationship we have with the addressee. So this kind of variation is called stylistic variation of language. There are different styles. Uh, so I will deal with them later on. But now let me just uh, tell you that of the several different styles, we we can summarize them. We can summarize all the different styles into two broad varieties of styles, namely formal style and informal style. So, what is formal style? In a formal situation, we use formal style. For example, if a person has to give a lecture, a person has to give a talk, a person has to teach in the classroom, etc., the person will choose formal style. And if a person has to uh, talk to a person who is superior to him or her, then formal style is used. Now, for example, uh, when the students converse between themselves, they use informal casual style. But when the same topic, when they have to approach their principal or director uh, to discuss the same topic, they would use formal language. Okay, so for I will elaborate on it with one simple example. In English, uh, there are several modal auxiliaries, but let me talk on uh, can, could, and may. When do we use can, could, and may? So when we ask for permission, for example, I want permission for something. So I can ask permission. Like in many ways. One is that please allow me to do this. Please allow me to do this. So instead of saying please allow me to do this, I can use an interrogative form, that is to say a question form. I can say, can I do this? Could I do this? May I do this? So what is the difference between the three? It is uh, it's about politeness. It is about formal. It's about it's about politeness. It's about being formal. Uh, Let us say uh, a boy goes to a bank for some work. Now he has to write and give an application, or maybe he has to put his signature somewhere. Okay, then he finds that he didn't bring the pen. Now he looks around and then finds that the person next to him has a pen in his hand. So how will he ask for uh, you know permission to use that pen? Now this man is a stranger, is not known to him, is not known to him. Okay, so he should not say, can I use your pen? He the most appropriate form will be, could I use your pen? And he may add, please, could I use your pen, please? But without please also it is okay, could I use your pen? Uh, but supposing that person next to him is known to him. In fact, he is his batchmate. He is not very close to him. He is not a friend, but he knows him. So he will ask this person, "Can I use your pen? Can I use your pen?" This is perfectly all right. It's a polite request for what, his pen. Okay, this is This is a request, a polite request. Now, when he says to the stranger, could I use your pen? It is more polite. Now, when can he use, may I use your pen? Now, let us say he is standing in front of the bank manager, and this boy is a college student. Okay. Now, bank manager is in authority here. Okay, so what is the equation between them? He is a customer, he is just a young boy, and this man is a senior person and he holds a very high position. He is the manager. So therefore he should say, May I use your pen, please? So boy doesn't have his any other alternative. He doesn't see anybody around whom he can ask for a pen, and there is no pen on the counter also. So therefore, he is left with no option but to request the manager. So what will he say? What will be the most appropriate form of question? He should ask, "May I use your pen, please?" So that will be the most appropriate request. So students, when they are first taught English, supposing a student comes late to the class, teacher is already inside the class. How does the student ask for permission? May I come in, sir? May I come in, madam? You don't say, the student is not supposed to say, can I come in? Is he or she is supposed to say, may I come in? Okay, so depending on whom the speaker addresses, depending on what the situation is, the speaker changes his style. Okay, the next topic is gender and language. What is gender and language? There is a relationship between gender and language. There are gender related variations of language. Uh, if we take some samples, speech samples of men and women and analyze them, then we will find that there are certain variations, and there are uh, social uh, reasons for this kind of variation. As we all know, women have always been subjugated. Man has always dominated. Man has been in the dominating position, whereas women have been uh, in subjugated position. Okay, so the result is that there are, uh, the equation between them is not that of equals. Okay, uh, so as a result, men and women speak different, slightly different languages, and also if we take samples of different languages, then we will find that language itself reflects uh, certain uh, differences. Now, for example, we can say that language itself displays bias against women, and in many languages, we will find that the words which are used to abuse others refer to women. Okay, uh, and that is one. And if you look at the proverbs, then you will find that many of the proverbs reflect inferiority of women. Many of the proverbs suggest that women are inferior, men are superior. So this gender related bias is seen in language in many ways, and most of the languages of the world do exhibit this kind of difference. The next topic is language contact, maintenance, shift, and death. So, language contact, that is, we find that what is meant by language contact? That is when several languages are spoken in the same area, then that means they are in contact. And as a result, what happens? One language influences the other. And sometimes we find that the influence is mutual. Like if there are three languages, we find that features of three languages overlap over a period of time. Then what happens? Sometimes a particular language is maintained, sometimes there is a shift. Now, this is the case of what? When there is a when there are in a particular place, there are there is a minor language and there is a major language. What will happen is the speakers of minor languages will shift their loyalty towards the major language. Why? Because if a person speaks the major language, there are many benefits. There are many socio-economic as well as political benefits, because the child has to look for a job, child has to go for higher education. So if the person child is proficient in the dominant language, then he will have many benefits. But if he so therefore what happens, for a for some generations that language is spoken at home, but outside the dominant language is spoken. But over a period of time, the speakers of a minor language, non-dominant language, shift their loyalty to the major language. And when this process goes on and on, then what happens? People uh, sometimes the language dies. Okay. Now, this has happened to many languages in the world, which I will elaborate later on. And in a language context situation, uh, we find that uh, uh, different forms of languages like pidgins and creoles develop. Now, for example, I will illustrate it with one example from Nagaland. In Nagaland, what happened? Nagaland, which was a district earlier, I mean, it was a district of Assam, and in Nagaland, what happens is that there are many languages which are tribal languages which are spoken by different Naga tribes. Now, therefore, there was no, link language between them. There was no common language between them. Then what happened? The administration decided to create a form of language which can be learned by everyone, so that it is used as a linked language. So they uh, simplified Assamese and took certain vocabulary items from other languages like Hindi, Bengali, as well as some of the dominant Naga languages also. So that form of language is called a pidgin. Okay, so Nagamis, you will find that what is spoken in, if somebody, I mean, if you asked a question, what is spoken in, what is the common languages in Nagaland, you will find the answer as Nagamis. But Nagamis is actually a simplified form of Assamese. Uh, Next is language and power. Language and power, I will elaborate later on how power can change uh, language. Language planning and policy. So planning and policy, why, when does it become necessary? When uh, a country has several languages, when there is multilingualism. For example, in India, we have, I mean, the census in 1961 identified 1562 mother tongues. Now, when that is the case, how does the government decide, which language the children should, which languages the children should learn? So, what happens is, uh, now they had to decide on, mm, they had to decide, and as a, so therefore, the government of India uh, constituted language commission, and the language commission recommended three language formula. That is to say, a child has to speak three languages. I mean, sorry, learn, a child has to learn three languages. That is, number one, mother tongue, then English, because English was necessary uh, for higher education. If the child has to go for higher education, English is essential, because all the textbooks, all the knowledge is available in English. So many people say that English should be abolished. I mean, as soon as we got independence, many people suggested that English should be abolished. But however, however, they realized that it was not easy to abolish English. So they decided to retain English at least for some more time. So then that is how they decided that child should learn English. Then it was decided that a common language, there should be a common Indian language, because as you all know, languages differ from states to state. So therefore there should be a common language so that uh, people from one state can communicate with people from another state, and as that is required especially for trade and commerce. People have to travel to different states in connection with trade and commerce. So there should be a common language. So this Hindi was chosen as the common language. As you all know, that Hindi is the largest spoken language in India. So this is that is why Hindi was selected by the Language Commission. Language Commission recommended that Hindi should be the national link language. But Hindi is not a national language. You must be clear about it. Hindi is not given the status of a national language. It is given the status of an official language, and English is given the uh, status of associate official language. So therefore, uh, central government administration uses Hindi and English, and central government offices in states use three languages, that is English, Hindi, and the regional language. So the state governments function, they use the state language and English as well. So there are different issues related to this, and so these issues happen in a multilingual situation. So we study these issues as well in social linguistics. Social linguistics of sign language. We find that it has been found that even sign language has some social linguistic variations. Especially the American Sign Language has certain uh, social linguistic variations. So this is also a topic of study in social linguistics. Social linguistics and education. Education is again, this I have already mentioned while talking about language and planning. That is to say, some amount of planning is required because, you know, to decide about the medium of instruction. So it is purely academic. But however, academic decisions are again influenced by social linguistic concerns, social linguistic factors. So these aspects are also a part of social linguistics. Finally, social linguistics and speech language pathology. So this is basically an applicational aspect, that is to say how knowledge of social linguistics is of use, or how knowledge of social linguistics is relevant to speech language pathologists. To be for to be sorry for To be an efficient or competent speech language pathologist, one has to understand these nuances, that is to say the social linguistic variations. Why? In order to distinguish between speech and language disorders and social linguistic variations, because some variations are not pathological, these are just natural, these are social linguistic variations. So a speech language pathologist must know which variations are natural, that is to say these are dependent on the social linguistic situation or context, and which deviations are pathological. So that is to say, to understand which deviations are the result of social linguistic the result of social linguistic variation, and which deviations are uh, pathological. I will just frame the sentence slightly differently again. A speech language pathologist must know which deviations are normal because they are social linguistic uh, varieties. I mean, these are, and which deviations are pathological, and so that they can plan adequate uh, therapy uh, and remedial measures. So, thank you very much. This is the end, and I will uh, continue with my talk in my next video.